Hey folks, Brian. Got to play Elderath last night. I was messing around with my microphones earlier, and does this sound any better or worse than the headset with the mic? Let me know. But anyway, Elderath. So, notes, here we go. Session 76. Down in that village on the Isle of Nis. Okay, in the morning, we get up and try to get the lay of the land. Runt overhears a conversation in the common room. As the sheep were brought down from a high pen, this guy saw a mast coming around the point. Point something or other. He didn't understand the name of the point. But he couldn't actually see the ship. Now we get a GM input of information. The port at Karsk gets a fair amount of traffic, and we have not heard anyone speak this dialect of Norse before. So our Norse skills are actually at half for this entire session. Makes things difficult. So after breakfast, folks start departing. We hear a chime, so we make our way down to the docks, and the fog is still thick. But Runt spies out some unusual rigging. There's 3 masts on this ship, and there's a green pennant with some kind of bird on it. And we all try and make these rolls. Did you recognize the bird? Anybody see the bird? That kind of thing. But as we're waiting there, a older gentleman and his assistant show up, and they start heading east on the dock. A launch arrives at the east dock, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. There's no plank overlapping like we're used to seeing. It's all smooth and painted. The locals here just have these simple rowboats. But the old man with his assistant greet the sailors. They are wearing clean white shirts. And they have these baggy bloused green pants. Another fellow, much more daptly dressed with a green cape slung loosely over his right shoulder. His bloused boots are dagged. He's wearing a doublet, has a black floppy hat with a wide brim with one side rolled up. He is wearing a rapier. Nice. An odd-looking bludgeoning object hanging from his belt. He bows extravagantly to the old man, and they begin a conversation as he leads the old man to a place to sit. Raymond approaches and tries to offer any of his healing skills, if they're needed, to the extravagantly dressed man. There is some kind of, we're not making rolls, it's not working good, but somehow we get that this guy's name is Kandilban. So Wes is sitting back on the pier towards the center, and he's continuing to search, looking for this pennant and the bird. And for a moment, the fog completely clears, right? And that gives a line of sight. And the ship has no fore or aft castle. It rides pretty high in the water. At the back is a balcony. About 10 feet off the water above that is a glass and woodwork structure. There are small rectangular windows just below the railing, maybe a dozen or so. The main mast has 3 spars. And there's a fair amount of activity on the deck. They're repairing damage, rigging, some of the spars have been broken, that kind of thing. Raymond and Wes, Raymond heads over to this other fishing village, and Wes just meets up with him because Raymond came back to talk to us what's going on. Wes talks to everybody what he saw. When they get to the fishing village, and Wes is able to catch the gist of this conversation. So Raymond's trying to convey that he has, healing abilities if anybody needs anything, but they have no needs right now. But the fact that the ship landed here is very unusual. Looks like they took damage from a storm and are getting repair materials. And as we are leaving, Wes over here is one of the younger workers asked, "Who is Lorath?" The boss man hushes him and said, "Doesn't need to be questioning the good men." So Raymond and Wes head back to the inn. Runt hangs out on the dock just watching. He sees on the ship a man smoking a pipe, from time to time walking out onto the back porch of this structure on top of the balcony. A second launch arrives. The sailors here have these long metal poles attached to some kind of wood piece. And they gather up, they've got a bunch of equipment, and they unload their stuff. A wagon arrives, the crew and the gear all get in the wagon, and Off they go. A group of 4 young boys come up towards Runt, and they are whispering among themselves, but they move on down the dock somewhere to go fishing. But one of them comes over to Runt and asks him something. Runt doesn't understand, so he tries to make some hand signals, but nothing comes about from this attempted conversation. So Runt kind of motions, fishing, and the boy comes, sits down next to him, starts fishing, and Runt pulls out his harmonica and, starts to play. Around noonish, work is continuing on the ship, and from time to time, those rectangular windows on the side of the ship open up. And there's some kind of strange contraption behind them. This is stuff that Runt sees. At some point after noontime, Wes goes to check on Thurman, but he's gone. Later that afternoon, we kind of figure that, there's kind of discussion. So we would have kidnapped him, but he would have told us he was leaving if he was going to leave, right? So there's kind of, but it doesn't look like his room was ransacked or anything, so we're not sure exactly what's going on. Wes kind of thinks he just took off. Okay, so, later that afternoon, the wagon comes back through town, and again, these 4 sailors are there, and they have these poles that are slung over their shoulders. And the wagon has logs in, right, for stuff. We make some rolls, and Wes goes unconscious again. Now, this time when Wes becomes conscious, he becomes awakened, or some might say illuminated. He is not where he was last. So in the process of us having this connection to our Far Horizon characters, if we see some kind of technology that can trigger memories and that kind of stuff, and that's what happened here. But he failed his save on staying conscious, but he has this memory of basic training, taking apart rifles and that kind of stuff, right? Taking care of a weapon. And on our character sheets, we've got the number of Far Horizon skills that we've opened and the number of Far Horizon skills total that our Far Horizons character has. And there's a percentage based on that. And Wes's was 10 something with the 5. He now has a 6th one, which was hide. He can actually hide now. Which raised to 12%. He then rolled an odd 8. So he's got in his head both Westlin and Dylan. So he's got access to both sets of skills and all that kind of weird stuff, right? So he has to make a sanity roll, which he made. And that's when it comes out. Okay, these 4 guys, they had percussion muzzle loading rifles. And my 2 personalities are being imposed upon each other. So it's a little confusing, right? So Wes stands up slowly. He looks at his watch, which is not there. He sits down, looking around. Raymond asks him what's wrong. He says, I'm not sure. Did you guys see the rifles? And Raymond and Runt, because of the mention of rifles, they get the whole chance to learn Far Horizon skills. And both Raymond and Runt do, in fact, learn another Far Horizon skill. In fact, Raymond also becomes awakened. So he's got access to both character sheets too. Okay, so the ship out in the bay is a cutter. It's a 24-gun cutter, about half the size of the U.S. Constitution, if you're familiar with that ship. And that bludgeon thing that the fancy guy had, was a pistol. Okay, that evening the sailors and Condilban arrive at the inn, right? It's getting dark and rainy, some thunders and stuff, so they're trying to find some place warm and dry and safe to get. And while they're there, a stranger appears and he rushes in and asks for a stiff drink. Khan then calls his men all together and he speaks to them. Raymond goes to try and figure out what's going on, and Khan speaks to Raymond in Elvish, or says something in Elvish, and they start speaking in Elvish. And Raymond knows Elvish, so he's trying to communicate back, but he misses his rolls. So Raymond starts writing stuff down in Norse, figuring that written descriptions of Norse would be the same. Kind of like, what do you say, Cantonese and, that's a Chinese language. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. So, Kazban orders his men back to the ship. Raymond kind of asks, okay, hey, we know your guys are out there. There's stuff, the stranger that appeared talked about lights in the sky and stuff. So we're thinking, Meiji magic or something like that. So Raymond's kind of asking, hey, I know your men are out there. Are they okay? And Khan writes back, yeah, don't worry about them. They're all right. There's an elf warrior in the past. And that's when he orders his men back to the ship. Okay, we said, oh, cool. An elf warrior. We need to go check this out, right? And as soon as we decide to do that, the door flies open and Thurman comes stumbling in. And behind him is a tall man in a black and white leotard suit with a mask. This is similar to the costumes that Wes has seen in Zig at fancy, dress parties. Oh, mask parties, right? He's wearing a mask. It is gold with very sharp angular features, and there's a plum of various reeds and plants and stuff that come off the mask like hair. In his left hand is a very thin, silvery dagger, kind of like a stiletto. In his right hand is a blood-red rapier. Now this, what's that? Is this like Bloodstone? And then there's a little discussion on Bloodstone. Oh, it's all in the live play, by the way, if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Because bloodstone is so rare, it's usually just jewelry and that kind of thing. To have a piece of bloodstone this big, even though it's a rapier, is extremely unusual, completely unheard of, right? So this guy's rapier also has a very ornate garb made of very silvery material that's inlaid with gold. Okay, Thurman makes some hand gestures for him to calm down, because as soon as it looked like the guy pushed Thurman in, Wes had jumped up and started to draw his rapier. And so he gets it halfway out, but he puts it back. And the guy in the mask asks if we came through the pass. He's using that funky Norse stuff that we don't understand. He and Thurman talk a little bit in Elvish. Not that we know it, but Raymond does. He then turns to Raymond and says in regular Norse, our Norse, I ask you, and I ask you again. His voice is light and lilting though, but it seems very stern. Did you take the ways last night? Raymond says he doesn't have the skills to take such a passage. The masked guy says, that is not an answer. And Raymond says, well, forgive me, we have not been introduced. We know little of you. At that, the innkeeper comes up behind Raymond and says, Ko asa di Malik, and then pleads with the masked man, being polite kind of thing. The masked man puts his blades away, takes off his mask. He is in fact an elf, and we all put our weapons down and calm down as well. The innkeeper brings out wine and a glass goblet for the elf and serves him first. The elf then asks us if we deny knowing him, Thurman, right? Of course none of us do. He then tells us that the ways are shut, and I had to keep my mouth shut to say that the dead keep it. You do not belong here. We will assist you in going back to where you came from. And we kind of say, hey, we came here for a reason. And he says, you are not where you think you are. Well, where are we then? And he says, the ways lead to many places, many realms. But we will assist you in returning you to where you came from. And we say, well, we are appreciative of that assistance. Thank you. He looks carefully at each of us and says, do any of you know why those found in the pail would be of interest in you? At this point, Dylan, right, is thinking of connections, right? And so Wes asks, are they against the Forerunners? And the elf says, do you mean the ancients? And Wes says, well, yes. And the elf says, curious that you refer to them as Forerunners. But the Forerunners fought against each other. These things in the pail were used as weapons. I would offer, and at that point he looks over at Thurman, to use great caution in using the ways. You could bring great destruction to innocence, through your ignorance. He smiles then and stands. We must go. So Thurman tells us we're not where we thought we were. It diverted our path. The ways diverted our path. There are many realms the path touches on, and I have no keys to this realm. He has no idea where we are either. So we kind of figured out that these demons, they followed us. Raymond kind of mentions, I don't think this elf guy means us any harm. Runt asks about, hey, can we go get some of the rifles before we go? But we don't have time. So we go and we gather up our stuff. We step outside and follow the elf. Runt looks like Runt is looking at, because it's kind of funny because Runt is all this time talking about, we don't go to the rain, get all wet and nasty. He didn't want to go check things out. So Runt looks to see if the elf is getting wet, and he is not. The elf makes his way north along the pass. Wes notes 2 other elves following along the sides, and Emerald tells him there's a 4th one behind us, and she's kind of hiding behind the cloak as best she can. She does not like the elves, apparently. So Hjalmar tries to catch up to the elf, but in response to that, the elf simply increases his pace. So now we're all jogging. It is quite a way, so obviously we'll have to slow down because we can't keep that up. There are no encounters along the way, and we reach the ways, right? And Run asks what the objects on the ship were, trying to make just gestures on. They can find that information, but the elf doesn't know. The elf tells us, I will lead you through to ensure you arrive properly and safely. After the fog clears... Oh, safely. We go through. After the fog clears, it's late afternoon. We can hear birds chirping in the trees. Raymond asked Thurman, does this look more familiar? Sure. Honestly, I have no idea. Okay, so we head down the pass. Yes, this is all looking familiar. As we round a bend, we see the harbor below, and there is no 24 gun cutter. There are some slight differences. The feel here is more comfortable than there was some oddity that we felt that before we went to that village. What was it called? Something Edge. Here on this. Anyway, so we go down to the inn, and the anchor, which is assigned because it's a broken anchor, right, is hanging, but it's hanging opposite from the way it was where we were before. We go in, introduce the innkeep introduces himself as Gus, which is the name of the same innkeep in the other Nis inn, Broken Anchor Inn. So this guy is younger. He also speaks regular Norse, the Norse we understand. Oh, the multiverse kind of stuff, right? Everything's duplicated somewhere. Thurman says that he'll take alternate transportation to get back to Kars. And he asks Gus, what news of Kars? And Gus says something about, the Baron is worthless. We have to go with the Munsters. That's one of the contending clan for leadership here in the north. So we are, in fact, on the Isle of Nis, the village of Dun Eastern. And we ask about the different islands right here, right? So the main ones are, I have no idea about these spellings, right? Or even pronunciations. Oknir, Othne, Nis where we are, then Othiar, Mixelar, and Visalar. The 2 to the west, there are 2 to the west towards the mainland, and then 3 to the east, northeast, go off to the Endless Sea. Okay. So we're talking with Gus, and we mentioned we're trying to hunt down this bandit named Mad Eye. And he says, oh, he's with the Furbog clan. They're a bad clan. And he is one of the worst. He lives on the isle of Maisklar in the village of Clarnes. I'm sure you can get past this Clarnes Fjord, but I stay clear of Clan Bog. And that's where we ended this session. So lots of interesting things. Got to meet an elf. Got awakened. The only real thing that I see Wes getting well, Dylan has 2 spell lists. One's mentalism and the other is essence. So he picked up 2 more lists, and obviously he knows all these different. He's got repair tech for powered armor and blaster weapons, and he knows how to use a Gauss rifle and all that kind of future stuff. I haven't really looked at some... Well, he can swim! Dylan can swim, Wes can't. So Wes can now swim. I was going to check some of the other ones to see where Dylan may have had higher stats than Wes did, but I don't think too much of that. But there are a couple of combat skills that Dylan has that may be of value. One was street fighting, but that's actually for missile weapons. House to house kind of stuff, so that doesn't work too much. But he has combat training, which allows him access to, I think it's 4 different weapon skills that get special bonuses. And one of those is dagger. So if he's fighting with his dagger, he gets a +4, and whoever's trying to guess him has a -4. Not much, but every point counts, right? So I was actually thinking last night, I need a top. Wes needs a top with a run. Hey, run. Let me show you something. Get that dagger out. See if we can't spread some of these bonuses around. Happy gaming.